And it would go as far as what we call parting of ways. Partings of ways. Now this is between the Gentiles and the Jews. Now, church historians and scholars reckon that this process started sometime in AD 31 and it ended in AD 131. And it climaxed at the rebellion of Bar Kokhba, Stephen Bar Kokhba in Judea, the guy who was based in Judea, who decided to organize a rebellion against the Romans. But this rebellion was crushed. And the Jews were the ones that initiated this. And by this time, the bridge between the Jews and the Gentiles was so, the division was so large, was so big, they had parted ways. Now, some would discuss and say, what actually happened? What happened? What caused the parting of ways? What caused the parting of ways? What caused this division between this period, the death of Jesus Christ, up to the rebellion by the Jews, rebellion against the Romans? Now, if you ask the Jews to explain why such divisions between them and the Gentiles, or the Gentile Christians, they would point to Jesus Christ, to the teachings of Jesus Christ, and say Jesus Christ would always raise issues against their leaders. You remember that Christ would, there's this portion in the book of Matthew where he breathed the woes against the teachers. Woe unto you, the Pharisees. Woe unto you, the priests. Woe unto you, the teachers of the Lord. Woe unto you, because you do this, you do that. And among the Jews, that was a sore point for them. And the Jews would say he did not respect the law. He would allow his disciples to pick or to harvest on Sabbath. He would even heal the sick, Jesus Christ himself, on Sabbath. On Sabbath. He would heal the thing. He did not, according to the Jews, he did not respect the Sabbath. He did not take the Sabbath seriously. And because of that, they felt that we can't continue with them. And in the book of Acts, towards the end of the book, you find the Christians worshipping in homes, and some of them under the trees, some of them by the river, by the river bank, and because they were no longer accepted in the synagogue. They were no longer accepted in the synagogue. So the gulf had opened between the Jews and the Christian Gentiles. And one of the things that was a sore point among the Jews, particularly after AD 70, you remember the destruction of Jerusalem. When the Jews, when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in AD 70, the Jews organized war against the Romans. But the Christians were not part of that war. They chose not to fight with them. So this event of AD 70, the destruction of Jerusalem, where the Jews felt that we were alone. You guys did not even lift your finger to assist us when the Romans were attacking us. Because of that, you are not one with us. We can't accept you as one with us. But worse still, the Romans would impose a tax on the Jews, which was called fiscus Judaicus fiscus. Now, this type of tax was intended for two things. It was intended to cover the cost of war, which the Romans incurred when they attacked the Jews in AD 70, and also to pay the temple tax for the temple of Jupiter. Now, they believed that the god Jupiter assisted them in overcoming Jerusalem. So the Jews were paying tax, in other words, honoring the god of Jupiter, and also covering the cost of war. And this tax was only imposed on the Jews, not on Christians. And the Jews felt that this was unfair. This was unfair. It means we are different. We are not the same family. Now, if you were to ask Christians and say, Christians, this would be the views of the Jews. If you were to ask Christians and say, why are you guys upset with the Jews? Why are you parting ways? The Jews would say, the Christians would say, we are no longer accepted in their synagogues. We are now worshiping in our house churches. We are now worshiping under the trees. We are now worshiping in places that are uncomfortable. And they have also, these guys, the Jews, they have also come up with a worship clause in one of the rituals. And in that clause, they actually curse the Messiah and everyone and the Messiah and his disciples. So whenever we worship, they would be doing this reading. And when we come to this reading, we would keep quiet and say, we can't say this because it is cursing the Messiah. So if we felt that we have become strangers and sojourners, and then they left. So they started worshiping in their under the trees. Now, if we say, what else would make you part ways with the Christians? They would say, well, Jews are not only hating us, they are also persecuting us. They also persecute us. So we receive persecutions not only from the Roman Empire, but we also receive it from the Jews. And remember, back then, Jewish religion was a legal religion. It was a legal religion. So it had been accepted. But the Christian church, because it was still new, the Roman Empire was still confusing the Christians with the Jews. They said, okay, they still worship the same, they still have the same Sabbath, but they have this Messiah, and these guys do not accept this Messiah. So it must be two groups. And definitely when we had war, when we waged the war against the Jews in AD 70, these guys were not part of it. So because of that, the Romans also contributed in dividing, indirectly, in dividing the Jews. There were so many things that would the Jews would also, the Christians would also argue and say, we can't worship with them because they don't like the Messiah. They don't accept the Messiah. We celebrate his resurrection. We celebrate the Messiah. We honor, we worship the Messiah. But his name is not even mentioned in the synagogue. They are still waiting for the Messiah to come. They have not accepted the Messiah. Rather, the one that we accepted as a Messiah was actually crucified. So Christians also had their issues. The issues with the Jews. They had issues with, they felt that the Jews had issues with the Messiah, and they made his life difficult while the Messiah was in this world. Now, the other part, the Romans also, we've mentioned this already. The Romans initially did not see a difference between the Jews and the Christians. They did not see it. But later on, after AD 70, they would decide that anyone who was part of this, is a Jew. Is a Jew. But anyone who was not part of AD 70, it's not a Jew. So they made that distinction. So they accepted that we now have a new group, Christians. These groups, that you have Jews, you have Christians. Jews suffered under the Roman law, but it was a legal religion. Christians also suffered, but they were not yet accepted as a legal religion. They would be accepted later on in their history. So this tension would also be seen when you read the book of Revelation, particularly chapter 2 up to chapter 3, when you read about the 7 letters. You read about the section where John says, I'm aware of those who call themselves Jews, but they are a synagogue of the devil. Now, the book of Revelation also highlights this tension between the Jews and the Christians. And when John was writing, they were still under the Roman rule. I've just quoted one example, but it was a terrible, things were not good for Christians. But not only from the Jews, they were not only receiving hatred from the Jews or hatred from the Romans. Even among themselves, Christians were divided. How were they divided? Now and then, they would be called to emperor worship, which happened in other cities once a year, in other cities, depending where you are in terms of the letters of Revelation. Sometimes in other places, when emperor worship would be so great that it would happen every month. But in other cities, it would be once a year. And Christians would be affected by this. If, in other words, one's loyalty was tested on the basis of emperor worship. If you don't participate in emperor worship, it means you are disloyal. And everyone who was seen to be disloyal was not permitted to do business with other people in the city. Remember back then, the trade was they traded between the goods. I would produce my goods and you would produce yours and we would exchange. Or sometimes they would even use silver and gold. But if you were seen to be disloyal to emperor worship, you were either persecuted and definitely you were separated from the community. In that you could not do business with anyone. You could not interact with anyone. Actually, people who would participate in emperor worship would be given certificates. So if you want to do business to show your loyalty to the emperor, then you would have that certificate. And if you have that certificate, it makes it easier for others to do business with you. But if you don't have that certificate, then you were seen to be disloyal and no one wanted to do business with you. So saints were divided as to how to behave. Some would go and do emperor worship, would go and worship, and some refused and did not, and there was no compromise. They refused to compromise. So you had those that refused to compromise, and you had those that compromised. So there were internal challenges even among the Jews, even before going outside. So there were internal challenges among the Christians themselves. Internal challenges, and those challenges divided them. And the main issue was emperor worship. And I'm just mentioning the main one. There were many others, But this was the main one, which was at the core. Because once you lowered your guards on emperor worship, then you actually ceased to become a Christian. I could go to external challenges, which came from outside the Christians now. Of course, Jews would be number one in their external challenges, and Romans would be number two, and each of them would have issues with them. For instance, the Romans would even persecute them for misunderstanding their teachings. Like, for instance, the teaching of the dedication of children was grossly misunderstood by the Romans. Someone whispered and said, "We heard that these Christians are actually sacrificing their children." And because of that, they were seen as, you people don't love your children. You don't have coherent families. You kill your children. And this was simply a misunderstanding of child dedication. And also the Lord's Supper. The Lord's Supper was also an issue, which was good to the Christians, but it created problems for them, because the Lord's Supper was understood by the Roman Empire as cannibalism. They are eating the blood and the body of Jesus Christ. What kind of faith is that? So they would look at them. They don't even worship our emperors. Instead of worshiping, they eat people. And because of that, they were seen, they experienced persecution. Persecutions were not spread throughout. There were some, like, if you were in Laodicea, you would not experience that. But if you were in Smyrna and other places, you would experience that in a terrible way. So the world of the New Testament church was a difficult world. It came to a point where they parted ways. Let's complete that part, the parting of ways. So ways were, by the end of the century, you had Jews on one side, and there was a big gulf, and you have Gentile Christians. But we also need to mention that there were other Jews who remained faithful. For instance, the disciples of Jesus Christ remained Jews. They were still, but the church had Gentiles in its majority. But you still had Jews who were loyal. And there was this big gulf of division between the two religions. And these continue to keep the Torah, including the Sabbath, and some of them continued with the sacrifices because they were still expecting the Messiah. So they continued with the sacrifices that were anticipating the Messiah, but the Messiah had come. Kept the Torah, but they rejected the New Testament teachings. So the writings of Paul were not read by the Jews. Jews started rejecting those writings. On the other hand, Christians, later on, when the gulf had opened, even beyond 131 AD, long after the time of the apostles, the last one would die around AD 95, John the beloved, and the church would continue even beyond that, and as the church progressed in the 2nd century, they began to lose some of the important things, like they lost the Torah, they lost the New Testament, the Old Testament, reinterpreted the Old Testament, and they still embraced Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was the person. They still embraced him. But the Old Testament was associated with the Jews. Therefore, it was not taken seriously. And they even reinterpreted it as the years rolled by, that this was an old covenant. We now have a new covenant. They did not accept the Torah, and later on they would even reject the Sabbath. They would reject the Sabbath. This would happen maybe in the 5th century. 5th century. So the gulf had opened between the Jews and the Christians. Now, around the 6th century, around the 600s, around AD 600, a new kid would surface on the block. Islam. Islam would join the party. And Islam, according to Muhammad, came to recover what the Jews and Christians lost. What the two lost when they parted ways. So Islam came to say, man, we can make peace here. We can, and as a result, Islam, if you read Quran is very much friendly to the Christians. Very much friendly to the Christians, very friendly to the Jews. Very friendly. But even initially, this was the attitude of Quran. But later on, after the Crusaders, the era of the Crusaders, which some of it even started even prior to this, the era where Christians would go around practicing conversion by conquest. You become Christians once we conquer you. And they would do this even to the villages where there were Islamic people. And this would create a tension. Initially, Islam came to recover what was lost by these two religions. But because of the way even the Jews related to the Islam faith and the Christians related to this, Islam would become a standalone religion. It would become a standalone religion. So now you have the Jews who are worshipping on Sabbath. They are worshipping on Sabbath. You have Christians who are worshipping on Sunday. Now you have Islam which worships on Friday. And all of them claim to be the children of Abraham. All of them. And there's tension among them. There's tension among them. Even today, if you want to work for the Muslims, if you want to preach the gospel to them, and you identify yourself as a Christian, they immediately think of crusaders. If you are a Jew and you want to work for Muslims, they see you as their enemy. Even today, you are an enemy. They always remember what happened, and even today they're still fighting for land. The land has become a big thing between these three religions. But what has happened after? Now you have Islam, you have Judaism, you have Christianity. These are the mainstream churches or religions. These are the mainstream religions. Others broke from these religions. Of course, Christianity you would have reformers under it, and within Islam you would have the Orthodox or right wing, and also the left wing. Even among Judaism, you have the Zionists, you have the Christian Jews. So the three religions are divided. These three religions are divided. But there is something common among them. There is something common among them. All of them claim Abraham as their father. All of them, in their writings, Abraham it's a hero. Abraham is a hero. They are the descendants of Abraham, but they are now divided. They are now divided. And I want to suggest that according to prophecy, there would come another religion, which I want to call it a remnant. And it emerges soon after 1798. After this period. This is the period that we always refer to, the 1260 years. It emerges after this period. And this religion, if you read Revelation chapter 12, 17, they are a remnant of the church, the seed of the church. And they have interesting qualities. They keep the commandments. They keep the commandments, and they also have faith of Jesus Christ. They have a faith of Jesus Christ. And this remnant does not share a history, or it's a religion that is unique and neutral, in the sense that it doesn't have a history of fighting anyone. Of course, they do have their own history of disappointment. If you're talking about skeletons, everyone is a skeleton, but these have their own skeleton. The 1844, their disappointment. And this disappointment had nothing to do with persecuting anyone. It was simply an understanding or misunderstanding of their religion. And I want to suggest that the Seventh-day Adventist fits this description. They keep the commandments of God. They also believe in Jesus Christ. And I believe that they are positioned to be able to reach out to these main religions, because they can't help themselves. They need someone from outside. So the ways have parted, and the way has opened for the remnant to be able to take its role. Now the question is, if the remnant is not taking its role, what will become of it?